Hi guys, so I recently did a top 25 of my favourite PSVR2 games. This is going to be a video of over 50 recommendations for people that are new to VR, because one of the hurdles to getting into VR is the potential for motion sickness. And it's a big deal if you don't address it properly. There are ways to mitigate the risk of you having any kind of discomfort in VR, and that will help you sort of find your VR legs, as they say, and get to the point where you feel comfortable with a whole range of different games. But it is really a good idea to start off with games that have less risk of causing motion sickness. And you can do this by choosing games that have less dynamic movement. Often it will be games where you are static within the game world and just doing things in one position and addressing worlds around you just in one position, not moving through a game world. It can also help to have games where things are moving towards you, but you yourself as a character within the world are not moving around too much. Then you can graduate onto games that have slow movement, and movement that just directly correlates with the movements that you're making in real life. This can really help to limit your potential for motion sickness. And also looking for games that have a high frame rate. So if you choose games that have 90 hertz native, or even better 120 hertz native, it just makes the game worlds smoother, and there's less friction and there's less chance for discomfort that can come from some of the visual artifacts that are present in some VR games. You have to remember as well that most VR games have a lot of options, and it's always worth going through the options to see if there are comfort settings that can help you play games. So even some of the games that you might be avoiding, that I might suggest that you avoid to begin with, probably can be played once you're starting to feel more comfortable if you go into those comfort options and use various things. For me, for example, I used to use click turning, sometimes known as snap turning, which makes you move in degrees of movement like this, just snapping to different angles of movement, and that really helps. Because one of the most common things that can cause motion sickness is when you're turning your character in a game world. That can really cause issues for some people. Because think about it, it's not actually that natural. In real life, you don't visually scan the whole arc of your turn when you're turning around. Rather, your attention sort of goes from A to B, more like snap turning. So in some regard, I think that that's actually closer to your experience of turning in real life, and that can really help. But here are a list of over 50 games that are recommended for beginners to VR to limit the chance of motion sickness and make you feel comfortable getting used to this strange and unfamiliar medium. Now these are in alphabetical order, so they're not in order of what I prefer and what's the best games, but they're all games that I recommend and are fun. I've not got any games on this list that I would say are bad games. These are all really fun games, but they are in alphabetical order, and there will be timestamps in the information bar that you can skip and look at each individual game if you think that you might be more interested in particular ones. I should state as well, actually, whilst I'm doing this video, I will have in the corner a little rating out of 3 for comfort. So ones that have 3 marks are absolutely safe, no bother whatsoever, no risk. 2 is very, very, very safe, but a little bit of motion, and 1 might be something that's slightly less certain to be safe for all people in VR. But all of these in this first section of this video, I would say, are likely to be very safe in terms of comfort for VR. So the first one is Angry Birds. Now, of course, this started off as a mobile game, and it's a really fun game in VR. You actually get to use the catapult in person. You're really physically sort of pulling back on a catapult and firing off these birds to knock down these towers, and it's actually really fun. And of course, you're in static positions when you play. You do teleport from one position to another around these structures that you're dismantling, but very comfortable in VR. No chance whatsoever of motion sickness. So the second game is Beat Saber. Of course, this is the most popular VR game ever made. It is the highest selling VR game ever made. And that speaks to the fact that it's just very accessible. It's very easy to understand what you're doing in there. You're in one position whilst these blocks come towards you and you're slashing them to the beat, and it's just super addictive, super fun. There's a reason why it's the highest selling VR game of all time, but it's absolutely fantastic. Beat Saber remains a great choice, especially for beginners. Border Bots is the next one. This game runs a good smooth 90 Hz native, so it's very smooth in the headset. You're also static whilst you're playing it for the main part of the game, where you're at a desk dealing with robots that are coming in towards you, and you have to sort of manage them according to different parameters that you have to set to. It's surprisingly fun. It might not sound or look like a lot, but it's actually quite fun, and it's very, very comfortable in VR. No lateral movement to speak of in the main sections of the game. The next one is Broken Edge. This is a melee sword fighting game where you are essentially standing in one position and taking on these opponents that come towards you very slowly. There is very slight movement within the game, but it's very comfortable. You're basically static, and it is basically parrying, attacking, dodging, using some special powers. It's actually quite fun, but again, very comfortable in VR. Next one is Budget Cuts Ultimate. So this is such a fun game. It is a full-length campaign. In fact, Budget Cuts Ultimate is 2 campaigns in one, so there's a lot of content here. But you are essentially using a teleport system to get around the levels. You can choose to play it with free motion, so there's an option there if you start to feel more comfortable, but the main way of playing this game is using teleports to get around the levels, so it's very, very comfortable to play. You never feel like there's a much lateral motion, and that is one of the things that can cause motion sickness. So Budget Cuts, really fun, like a puzzle adventure game with a lot of humour. I've had a great time with this game. The next one is Crisis Brigade 2. This is really, really fun. It's a light gun game in VR. You basically feel like you're inside like a Virtua Cop or something like this, Time Crisis. And it's teleportation, so you move from one position to the next and fighting waves of baddies. Great graphics on Crisis Brigade 2, nice and crisp in the headset. Again, a high resolution, also good for comfort in VR. Very, very fun, a nice shooter, Crisis Brigade 2. The next one is Sea Smash VRS. This is essentially sort of a squash type game set in this sort of Dreamcast looking robotic environment. But again, you are essentially in one position for the majority of the gameplay that you're playing. You can move side to side, but it's very comfortable in VR. There are some modes on this game where you actually stay in one position as well, so those especially very comfortable in VR, but very, very fun. I have had dozens of hours in this. Very good multiplayer online as well. Usually you can find someone to play against. A lot of fun. Next one is Demeo. This is a sort of tabletop RPG where you're moving through these dungeons, controlling a group of players. It's a very good multiplayer game as well, of course. You can play it solo. Very crisp in the headset, high resolution, high frame rate, so it's got a good performance. But you are essentially stood over the game world and you're watching your characters move around this sort of tabletop dungeon. So again, no lateral movement for you as yourself in the game. You're watching the action below you. Very, very cool game. Next one is Drums Rock. Now, of course, this is just a drumming game, so you're staying in one position, targets are coming towards you, and you hit them to the beat, and it's very addictive, very fun. You've got to get the positioning right, though, to make sure that it feels like you're actually hitting the right positions. Once you get that, this is a lot of fun, lots of DLC content as well, fun game. The next ones are 2 games, Five Nights at Freddy's 1 and 2. Now, these are horror sort of games where there's various challenges that you have to complete in order to avoid getting killed by these scary creatures that are coming after you. But it is ideally a room scale game, so you move around small rooms, small environments, carrying out these challenges, and the only movement that you do in the game is the movement you actually do in real life. And this is a commonality between games that are easy to feel comfortable in VR, is where there's no, you're not pushing a thumbstick to move your character through the world. It's only your real life movement that takes you around these spaces. That usually feels very, very comfortable, especially if you've got a high frame rate. And Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted 1 especially looks fantastic in the headset, great performance. I would recommend number 1 if you only want one of them. but if you finished that and loved it, then number 2's there as well for you. The next one is Forever Bowl. There is some movement with the thumbstick in this game. You can use teleportation as well, but once you're actually there at the bowling aisle and actually playing the actual bowling game, it's very static. Of course, you're just walking up and throwing your ball down and hitting the pins, so there's not a lot of movement at all. It's very comfortable, very fun, simple cost bowling game. It's a budget game, but it is fun, and it's very comfortable in VR because you're not moving around a lot. Next one is Gazzlers. This is a sort of roguelite wave shooter. Now you are moving, you are on the back of a sort of train carriage that is moving along these train tracks, but you as yourself are not moving around. It's just the carriage that you're on that is moving backwards whilst you're shooting at targets coming towards you. And it's very comfortable because you yourself are not moving around. There's no need to turn. You're basically facing one direction the whole time as this carriage moves backwards through these environments. But it is very comfortable. Again, a very high frame rate, very high resolution. The performance in games usually does help with comfort. This is a fun and addictive roguelite with lots and lots of upgrade skill trees to work on. And yeah, it's actually quite addictive, quite a lot of fun. Next one is Ghost Signal, another roguelite, but of a very, very different variety. You are essentially piloting a spaceship through a section of 3D space, and once you've set the path that your ship moves along, you then control the shooting that the ship does. So you yourself can basically stay in one position as a player. You can also move yourself around this environment by pulling yourself around, and it's just a very intuitive and very smooth and slow and measured way of getting around. So there's no dynamic crazy movement. You won't be turning around in circles. You're pointing in one direction, but you are able to move around slowly. But it's very, very comfortable in VR and actually surprisingly addictive. I was surprised how much I like this game. I've got around 80 hours in it. On videos, it's not a game that instantly appeals, but once you're in there, it's very, very fun and addictive. Again, lots and lots of upgrades, skill trees, of course, like all good roguelites do have. The next one is Humanity. Now, of course, this is a game that is also available on the flat screen. You'll be able to find loads of reviews for this game. And you're essentially sort of like a Lemmings game. And you're in God mode, trying to manipulate these tiny people and getting them to the exit. But again, you yourself are not moving around a whole lot. You're just observing the levels and manipulating what these little people do. Very comfortable in VR. Very cool game as well. Island Time is the next one. This is a cool cel-shaded looking sort of puzzle game where you are placed on these small islands and you can interact with all these different objects around you to find solutions to little puzzles and make your way to the next location. But again, no lateral movement through worlds. You are in one solitary position and you can move all around though. You can turn all around. Physically, it's best to do that. The best way to feel comfortable in VR is to physically actually move your body around rather than using thumbsticks. This is a surefire way to remain comfortable in VR. Island Time is a cheap budget game, but actually quite charming and quite a lot of fun. The next one is Job Simulator. This is the second most popular, highest selling VR game of all time after Beat Saber, and for good reason. It is just really charming, really fun, great graphics and performance. And again, you are in static positions, interacting with a whole range of various different items to solve puzzles. And it's just a lot of fun. If you haven't played Job Simulator yet, you need to. It's one of the top sellers for a good reason. Very, very fun and very comfortable in VR. The next one is Moss Book 1 and 2. These are sort of a diorama platform puzzler action adventure game. There's a lot going on, very charming, again great graphics, but again you are in God mode, controlling a character moving along these diorama platform worlds. You yourself stay in one position from location to location whilst you control the little character Quill going through these worlds. Beautiful game, a lot of content, quite big games, and again just fantastic action. You've got upgrades, skill trees, you've got combat, you've got puzzles, and lots of interactivity, and you just cannot skip on Moss Book 1 and 2. Stand out VR games. Next one is Not for Broadcast. This is a quirky little game where you essentially control a TV studio broadcast and choosing the edits and what content will be showed, and it's very unique. If you ever remember a game called Night Trap or Double Switch on a Mega CD, it's kind of similar to that. I had a lot of fun with it, but you again, as the player yourself, are remained in one location, looking at this bank of monitors, controlling what is and what isn't used for the final broadcast, and very comfortable in VR. The next one is OhShape. Now this, if you've ever seen those Japanese game shows where people have to make themselves into crazy shapes as walls with these cutouts come towards them and they have to try and squeeze through, that's what this is basically. It's a lot of fun. Again, you are staying in one position, moving your body around to get through these holes in these oncoming walls, and very comfortable in VR. Again, a good high frame rate, but no turning around, you're always facing forward. Very comfortable in VR, very, very fun. Next one is Pistol Whip. This is a rhythm action game where again you are always facing forward and the levels move towards you, so this is one of the things that helps you be more comfortable in VR. If things are moving towards you in VR, it's usually okay. The discomfort in your VR usually comes when you're having to actually move your character yourself around and around game worlds, whether it's turning or moving through game worlds using the thumbsticks. And when those movements don't correlate with your actual real life movements, that's when the disconnect can come, that's when motion sickness can come at the start of your VR journey. It's something that you will get used to, and eventually you'll be able to play anything with no bother at all. But it is a good idea, like I said, to sort of have a gradient introduction to VR. So Pistol Whip, really, really fun, and shooting action, but lots of dodging as well, dodging scenery and bullets, and a good workout, really addictive, really fun, very comfortable in VR. Next one is Prison Boss VR, a little budget game where you're solving puzzles inside a prison cell, and you're essentially making contraband to sell on and to get money, to get upgrades and do various challenges to progress the game. But again, you're staying in one location, you can move yourself physically around in this location, but you don't need to use thumbsticks. It's very comfortable, very, very fun game. Next one is Puzzling Places. This is a 3D jigsaw game where you are again sat in one position and selecting pieces to bring towards you to put together in a 3D puzzle. It's very relaxing and a unique game, but again, because you're not moving around anywhere, it's just really chilled. So I would definitely recommend Puzzling Places if you're into jigsaws, 3D jigsaws. This is a new thing to me, quite cool. Next one is Racket Fury. This is a table tennis game, but of course being table tennis, you are in one location, you're facing forward and nothing else, and it's just playing table tennis. But the physics in this game feel absolutely spot on, and it's got a very high frame rate as well, so the graphics are so super smooth. You're guaranteed to feel comfortable in this game, and it's just so intuitive. Everybody knows instinctively how to play table tennis, and that's what all this is. The next one is Seeker My Shadow. This is a charming little budget platform puzzler where you move around these little platform worlds, controlling a little character on it, solving puzzles. Now there is some movement around the worlds, but again it's slow, and you control it yourself by pulling yourself around. So it's pretty safe in terms of motion sickness. You shouldn't have any trouble at all with Seeker My Shadow, especially if you're into puzzle games. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this. It doesn't look like much in video reviews, but this is often the case for VR. It's hard to be sold on a game until you're really in there and get to grips with them. Next one is Synth Riders, another rhythm action game like Pistol Whipped, where the levels are coming towards you, but you stay in one location facing forward the whole time, and you're just moving your hands around to hit these targets and follow these lines and dodge these pieces of scenery, and fantastic music selection, lots of DLC to download if you want as well, but a really addictive game. This is my current favourite rhythm action game. Next one is Tetris Effect Connected. It's Tetris but in VR, but it's super psychedelic. You're surrounded by these beautiful explosions of colour, but of course it's Tetris, so you're staying in one position, you're just watching this Tetris board, but there's lots of beautiful things going on around you. Super comfortable in VR, super chilled. Next one is Tennis on Court. Now, You might think this wouldn't be on this list, but actually, because this game allows you to teleport directly to where the ball is going to come to next, it actually doesn't, there are options to allow you to have a very small amount of lateral movement within this game. And the physics are great, it's a really fun game, it's just tennis in VR and it works exactly how you'd expect it to do. But make sure you go into the options and select the modes that have you teleport to where the ball is going to be. Then when you start feeling more comfortable, you can then upgrade to have more sort of freedom in the movement when you get in, a bit better with motion in VR. Next one is Tentacular, a fun little puzzle game where you are a massive octopus and throwing these objects around and solving puzzles. But again, not a lot of movement on your part. You're just picking things up and interacting with this world, but it's actually very charming and it's actually a very cool game. The next one is The Room, a dark matter, The Room VR. A fantastic puzzle game, high production values, high frame rate, high resolution. Teleportation is used, so you go from node to node, solving puzzles, no lateral movement whatsoever through the worlds, all teleportation, super comfortable, and it's one of the most highly rated games in VR in general, I would say, especially as a puzzle game. It is right up there with the best of them. The Room VR, do not miss out on that one. The next one is Tiger Blade. This really feels like sort of Virtua Cop, but for ninjas. I've had a lot of fun with this game. It uses teleportation node to node, so there is some movement, but it is very controlled and broken up and very limited. So you're usually staying in one position, shooting at enemies and slashing at enemies as well, and blocking as well. So the action itself is very visceral and very fun and addictive, but you will take out a certain number of enemies and then teleport to the next location. Super comfortable, dead safe and dead set. Next one is Unplugged Air Guitar. It's basically Guitar Hero in VR, and you stay in one position, playing your guitar, watching these notes come towards you and trying to hit them. It can be a bit awkward to play at first. I think this game was initially designed to be hand tracking, but using controllers takes a little minute to get used to the controls, but once you do, it's actually a lot of fun, and it does definitely give you that Guitar Hero vibe. Very comfortable in VR because there's no movement whatsoever. You're just stood there playing the guitar. Next one is Walkabout Mini Golf. Now this game can be played with movement, but it has an option to use teleportation and also to click you to exactly where you need to be over the ball to take your next shot. So you can play this game with no lateral movement through the game world whatsoever, using just teleportation. And it's very, very fun game, one of the most popular multiplayer games in VR as well. I play it solo myself, but Walkabout, huge amount of content, brilliant game, so fun, physics are fantastic. If you haven't played that yet, it's a must for VR. The next one is What the Bat. Now this is essentially, it's like a Wario World game where you're just using a baseball bat to solve puzzles essentially and do these very short but fun little sort of Wario World-esque tasks, and you are always again staying in one position and not moving through worlds. Very comfortable in VR and actually quite a lot of fun. The last one on this list is Zombieland. Zombieland is another node-based teleportation shooter. Beautiful graphics, high resolution, high frame rate, lovely cel-shaded look to this game, and you're just shooting zombies, and it's a score attack game, very addictive, lots of upgrades, but super comfortable in VR because again, you're just moving forward through these worlds, one teleportation at a time, and you stay in a static spot, taking out enemies and then moving on to the next spot. Zombieland is great fun. So that is the list of games that I think are super safe and will not be a risk of motion sickness for you if you're new to VR. Now I've got a few games that are intermediate, so once you start to feel a bit more comfortable, you might want to try some of these. So the first one is Ancient Dungeon. There is a lot of movement in this game, but it runs at 120 Hz native, so it's super smooth in the headset, and this really helps with comfort. It's one of my favourite games. I've got over 100 hours in it. It's a roguelite game, and don't be put off by these simplistic Minecraft looking graphics. It is super intuitive and everything just works smoothly and as you'd expect it to. Lots and lots of fun. Hundreds of upgrade combinations that you can play with to tailor the player experience to how you want to do it. Ancient Dungeon is one of my absolute favourites, and I think it's very comfortable in VR because of that very, very high frame rate. The next one is Arcade Paradise. Now again, there is movement in this game, but again it runs at 90 Hz native with a high resolution. This helps with comfort, and for much of the game you are in static positions because you end up just playing the arcade cabinets. But before you get there, there is some movement when you're working in this sort of laundromat, trying to build up money to build up your arcade. But yeah, there is a lot of parts of the game where you're just static in front of arcade cabinets, playing these old retro games. And again, very slow movement through the world when you do need to move, so that helps as well. The next one is Cave Digger 2, another game that really isn't sold by watching a video. It doesn't look like much, very simplistic graphics, but to me it's a lot of fun, very addictive, and again high frame rate, and again slow movement at your leisure, at your choice, nothing too crazy. Cave Digger for me was a surprise and I really enjoyed that one. Next one is Cosmodread. This is a horror themed roguelike game where the movement is very slow, and again it runs at 120 Hz, so super smooth refresh rate. That helps with comfort, like I've said, but yeah, very slow movement through these worlds, very deliberate, so for me that is one that feels very comfortable and is a good intermediate game when you're starting to feel a bit more comfortable and you want to test yourself with something that has more movement. It's actually very, very fun, even though it looks simplistic in videos. Beautiful in the headset because of that high frame rate. And the next one is Cosmonious High. This is a very, very fun, charming game. Again, it's similar to it has a sort of job simulator vibe, although you can move through these environments instead of just being stuck in static points like Job Sim. This one you're moving through this sort of high school for aliens, but again you do end up sort of staying at certain locations and interacting with lots and lots of different objects to carry out tasks and solve puzzles in specific locations, but you can move around whilst you're going from location to location. And again, most of these games will include options to use teleportation if the movement through worlds is too much for you. Always look in the options to see if you can use teleportation, as you can in Cosmonious High. The next one is Creed Rise to Glory, a boxing game. So of course you're basically standing relatively, moving around quite slowly around the rings, and usually staying pretty still in small environments, just having these boxing matches, and you're basically just concentrating on dodging and punching. And there are some, of course, training mini games as well that are static in isolated locations. But it's a very, very cool game. It's another one that's sold very, very well, and for good reason. This deserves your time. I would say Creed is a lot of fun. Madison VR. This has been called scientifically the scariest game ever made. It's got a super high resolution, high frame rate, beautiful in the headset, but you're moving through these worlds very slowly and deliberately. And again, it's a puzzle game, so you'll come up against static points within the rooms that you're exploring, solving puzzles. So not a lot of dynamic movement, very, very slow and deliberate. Should be fine for you in the headset, very comfortable and very scary if you can get through it. Next one is Red Matter 1 and 2. These are graphical showpieces for the headset, absolutely beautiful. It's ridiculously high resolution, high frame rate, especially Red Matter 2. Again, 120 Hz. Unbelievable how they've managed to optimize this game so well. But again, very slow movement through these game worlds, and again a puzzle game, so you'll often find yourself in static locations solving puzzles before you move on to the next part. Very comfortable in headset and a beautiful adventure, one of the best games on PSVR2, absolutely. Next one is Swordsman VR. So it's a melee arena fighter where you again are making very slow and deliberate movements towards your opponent. Nothing crazy, nothing too fast or dynamic, and again most of the movements you make are directly correlating with what you're doing in real life, and that helps with comfort. It's a lot of fun. Swordsman has had a lot of content added to it since launch as well. Next one is Switchback VR. This is a horror themed roller coaster game where you're just shooting targets, and it's a lot of fun. And again, because you're just moving forward along these tracks, It's very comfortable in VR, shouldn't cause you any problem. It's very atmospheric, great graphics, resolution, frame rate. Next one is Until You Fall, a really fun melee roguelike game with lots of cool upgrades, beautiful graphics, and again, very slow, deliberate movements through the game worlds as you take on these different opponents that come up towards you and you're dodging, parrying, attacking, and awesome game. Had such a fun time with this. Next one is Vendetta Forever. This is another sort of node to node wave shooter game where you're teleporting from point to point, so there shouldn't be any problem with comfort for this game as well. Vendetta Forever, very stylish, very fun, fast paced, but the movement is not uncomfortable for beginners, I would say. And the last one that I've got for you today is Seventh Guest, one of my favourite puzzle games in VR. And again, you're moving through these environments very slowly, and you are finding yourself in locations where you will stay in place to solve puzzles that are in front of you before you move on to the next areas. And again, nothing dynamic, nothing crazy, slow deliberate movements and solving puzzles in static locations. So there you are, guys. That is over 50 games that are pretty much guaranteed for you to feel comfortable with as a newcomer to VR if you're worried about motion sickness. And I would say this is a good approach for anybody, because one of the saddest things for me as a fan of VR is to see people try something that's just too crazy for the first time and then be put off by VR completely because it made them feel uncomfortable. So to avoid that, have this graded approach where you introduce yourself slowly using games that are pretty much guaranteed to be comfortable and not cause you any motion sickness. So there you are, guys. That's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.